Welcome to Live Pure, the podcast. I'm your hostess, Janelle Alexandra. Get comfy, settle in, as we discuss all things health and well-being. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's get to talking about living pure. Hi, welcome back. Today we're talking to Dr. Ben. How are you today?
Doing great. Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming. So there's some new things that I wanted to talk to you about. I want to make sure we've got room for all three of those subjects. But first of all, let's talk a little bit about what you do here in Scottsdale.
Okay, sure. So I'm a chiropractor. I have an office called Life Unfolds Chiropractic. I do a technique called network spinal, which is all low force, light touch, no snapping, cracking, popping. It's more about working, using light touches to get the nervous system to release the tension that it's holding rather than like beating it out of people.
Yeah, and I agree with that technology because I think in a world where we're constantly go, forcing ourselves to do things, we need more light and nurturing type touches. So I really appreciate what you're doing for people.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, the body's holding tension for a reason, right?
Yeah.
So let's work with it instead of against it.
Yeah, because do you agree that we could possibly reinforce trauma holding in the body if we're forcing it to do things it doesn't want to do?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. How did you become a chiropractor?
Well, I was working as an engineer for a long time, and I had a bunch of health challenges in my 20s, chronic fatigue, eczema, brain fog, really bad like chronic muscle pain, and really bad digestive issues that sent me kind of on a journey because I was going to traditional medical doctors and like getting sent specialist to specialist, guy to guy. No one can figure it out, and just kind of getting really frustrated with that process, thinking like, oh, I'd just show up and they'd give me the medicine to cure me. And that didn't happen. And so I had to figure things out on my own. And that was like a very frustrating but enlightening journey. And then as time went on, I just, I was able to heal from all of that. And as time went on, it just became like my hobby and my passion, because I was not passionate about the work that I was doing. And I just, at one point I made a decision of like, I would rather like start over in a new career than keep going down this path. And so I was actually going to be a naturopath, but I was in Texas where they're not licensed. And so I was going to just go to chiropractic school, practice more as a naturopath, just work with people on diet and lifestyle, but stumbled into some other things that I'm also passionate about. So now I really run two businesses and just, really trying to just pay it back, like help people that were dealing with the things I was dealing with, because I found out, into the journey that, a lot of other people are suffering with this and mainstream medicine really can't help them. So like, let's build a better mousetrap.
Were you ever prescribed like antidepressants or anything like that? A lot of people, were they telling you it was just in your head, there was nothing wrong with you?
Yeah, offered that. I wouldn't do it. Yeah. I felt, it was treated like, your labs look normal. Oh, maybe this is in your head. Maybe this is just stress. Like, yeah, okay, but then what do we do, right? And it's just like blank stare, antidepressants or, antibiotics for your gut issues. Like, okay, we're going to nuke all my gut bacteria. Like, what's that going to do?
Yeah.
So offered a lot of kind of like, we'll just do this and see what happens versus like, okay, we figured out what's wrong with you, or like, no one really cared. It was sort of like, we can't figure out what's wrong with him, so we'll just kind of brush him off or refer him to this other guy so I don't have to deal with it, right? And I was just getting like passed around and no one wanted to go, hey, Ben, you know what, sorry, we can't figure it out, but we're going to get to the bottom of it and find a solution. No.
No holding your hand or...
No. Like you see the episodes of like House, and these medical shows where they're like, the patient has a mystery disease. Like, we're going to,
everybody comes
the
together
and like meet as a team in a room on a whiteboard and like figure out what it could be. Like, that doesn't happen. They just go, I don't know.
And then send you to somebody else. And how many years were you going through these autoimmune deficiencies?
It was probably, I was going through several years of like having symptoms and kind of not really knowing what was going on. And it kind of when it hit a fever pitch, was really interfering with my life. That's when I started seeking out help. And that process was probably about 8 to 12 months of like getting the runaround before I like was like, oh my God, like they're never gonna figure it out. Like I gotta do something because yeah.
All right. And so then when did you start writing your book?
I started writing my book second year of chiropractic school in 2014 and procrastinated on it for about 8 years and then finally published it in 2022.
And what's the name of it?
Create Health. Oh, yeah, we got the
yeah.
copies of it, so we'll show it to the audience.
It's a beautiful book.
Create Health, Reverse Autoimmune Disease without drugs or their side effects.
Yeah.
And this is me with the smoothie that I actually drink every day.
Yeah, there was a smoothie that you had at one of that group meeting we went to, and it smelled like bananas and blueberries. It was green, but it smelled so yummy.
Yeah, it was bananas, blueberries, and greens, most likely.
Yeah, okay.
So yeah.
Do you drink just one smoothie a day?
Sometimes more, but yeah, usually like one meal a day is a smoothie. So.
And how often do you eat like an entire bowl of peaches?
When I can get good peaches, as much as possible, but that's been a bit of a tricky thing this year to get good ones.
Now, did you learn about health and nutrition while you were going to chiropractic school, or was this all just self-learning things?
I
as you were
learned
healing
this
yourself?
stuff before, like kind of like self-study, like in my own healing journey. So I had learned all that stuff in the years coming up to school. So I understood most of that, but I like continued to study at a deeper level while I was in school. I interned at a clinic where they did all just like inpatient nutrition. So people would come and they would just feed them healthy plant-based food or put them on a fast, like a juice fast or a water fast, and they would get better just from doing that. So it was like a residential health center. It wasn't like a hospital per se, but people stayed there. And like the only therapy they really did was just feed them the right food so that their bodies could heal themselves.
Do you think that if they had incorporated other techniques of like dealing with their stress, that maybe that would have made a difference as well? Or
they did a little bit of that, but I think they kind of wanted to stay in their lane with things and not like broaden their scope too much, and just be really good at what they do and refer all that other stuff out.
Interesting. What I really liked about this book was that it was written in a way that anybody could read it and be like, oh, I can do this.
Yeah.
And it's so simple. It's things that I think majority of our population knows to do, just eat healthy.
Yeah.
But what do you think are some of the reasons why 70% of the U.S. population is still considered obese and overweight?
Well, I'll answer that question in a second, but just to what you said, I appreciate that comment about like it making sense, because what I really wanted this book to be was like, man, if I ever had a time machine, I could go back 15 years in the past and just hand my old, here's the manual, just like condense all that wisdom down into just like a book so I could just read that and, oh, implement this. Well, this guy on the cover looks like me. So yeah, I really tried to make it like digestible and like make sense to everybody, even if you don't have like a science or medical background. But to answer the question, the real reason, 70% of the country is obese, it's because we don't eat real food. Everything's processed, everything's packaged, everything's microwave, everything is, the window diet, right? Like the food's always being handed to you through a window.
I've never heard that term, but I really like that. I'm going to use that. The window diet.
And it's not really even food. It's food-like products, right?
Yeah.
We refine all of these other things, like we take corn and we refine out the oil and we fry things in it, and then we refine out the sugar and we coat things in the corn syrup, and we just bastardize all these things that used to be food and turn them into these like refined products that have, in that process, all the nutrition is stripped away.
Yeah.
And so we're getting all this excess of calories with no vitamins or minerals or phytonutrients or anything really valuable in them. So we're just getting like empty calories, and the body can burn it as fuel, but it's like dirty fuel that just leaves behind a bunch of like metabolic waste that begins to cause disease.
Yeah, which builds up in the system. And
As you know, in the lymphatic system, that's kind of where the sewage system where it ends up.
Oh, the sewage system, yeah. I love this book. We're actually doing a book club on this book.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So again, what I really
think that's a first, so I'm flattered.
Okay, well, it's part of our Top Docs group, so you were the first one. But
there's a a book club in Top Docs? No one even told me.
I just started it.
Oh, okay.
It's on the 30th if you want to come.
Okay.
But again, what I really liked about this book is you broke it down. So you shared your story, again, how you yourself got sick. You explained what autoimmune disease is. So again, somebody who's waking up every day and they're not necessarily feeling themselves, they don't know why they're so tired. This kind of explains it. It gives some symptoms so that it helps somebody maybe understand a little bit about, are they relating to you, right?
Yeah.
And then what's the cause of the autoimmune disease? And then different approaches. And so you give the science backed in here as far as like the plant-based diets. I think there's even like bodybuilders out there these days. We have pro athletes that are on specific vegan diets and they're living very healthy, amazing lives.
Yeah, I'm fortunate enough to be friends with many of them. So
yeah, cool. Yeah. So again, the simplicity of it, yet, like for me, I'm reading this and I'm like, oh God, this is so simple. Why doesn't everybody just do this? And so I feel like everybody should have this book,
well,
so that it's
you.
like the starter of like, hey, this is so easy, and then it gives them like a platform to like jump off of like, where do I go next?
Yeah, I think to some degree it's simple, but it's not easy, right? Especially when the world isn't set up to eat fruits and vegetables and drink green smoothies.
No.
Like you drive down the street and like the McDonald's fan is like pointed at the street and it's blowing the smell at you and you're like, oh, I want French fries.
Yeah, and so much of that stuff, just like any other drug, is really very addictive.
Yeah. So it's not easy to implement it, but it's simple in theory. It's not like, oh, okay, go to the Amazon and find this mushroom that grows under the specific tree and mix it with this other thing. Like it's like kindergarten level. Like you eat fruits and you eat vegetables and you stay away from everything else and you get better. Right? It's almost like so simple that people are like, when I first stumbled across it, I was like, is it this easy? Like, is it?
And it really is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it this, like, that's too simple. We always want complex,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, we want a pill and we want it to take years. We want somebody to explain it to us in X, Y, Z.
Well, we don't want it to take years, but we want to get results fast, which that's not a thing. It's usually a protracted process, but like we think that like, man, I've done all these other things. It can't be this simple as doing this, but anyway, that's a long conversation.
Like the mind-body connection and why it matters.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then how to succeed in the real world. Like, again, can you give like a couple of examples to somebody who might be struggling with just trying to eat better? Like what are some
well, I think the biggest thing is like realizing that like, I spent most of my life just when I was a kid, my parents made me my food. When I was in college, I lived in a dorm, there was a dining hall. It's like when I got out adult in the real world, it's like, well, let's go to Taco Bell, right? And so I had always abdicated that to someone else. I had never really like learned that. So I think a big part of the thing is like, you just got to realize that you're in control, right? And that like you're responsible for your health and you're responsible for the food that goes in your body. And so it's like a proactive approach. Like I pack a cooler every day of like a smoothie and like, I had a big half of a watermelon today. So it's like I'm prepping all my food beforehand and I'm ready to go. And I'm not like praying like hell that when I, that there's some restaurant across the street that's got mangoes, because I know there ain't. So it's really fundamental and simple, but you gotta like learn how to find like the good quality produce and all of that. But once you do, it's just a matter of staying on top of it and always having it with you and stuff like that.
Having it with you. So it's just building better habits then.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
Building systems. And I think for me, like coming from an engineering background, it was very easy for me to like, okay, if I want to succeed at this, I got to have systems, like I got to make sure that like I'm, buying more produce twice a week, that I'm, things are ripening. Am I having enough of this and enough of that? And am I preparing it? And when am I doing it? And how am I doing it? And just having systems that like made it easier, even though it's not easy.
It's not easy, no.
Yeah,
it takes effort.
Systems and habit definitely make it easy. And I was talking with a client last night and she's like getting really great results, but she's like, how am I going to sustain this for the rest of my life? Am I really going to make a smoothie at 8 o'clock every night for the next day for the rest of my life? I'm like, I've been doing it for 15 years. I really don't even think about it. So yeah, once you get enough repetition, the system becomes a habit. It becomes easy to do. People think like, oh, Dr. Ben must have all this discipline to do it. It's like, I had discipline in the beginning when I was really suffering, and even then I didn't have much because it was like do or die. I was just like suffering so bad. But eventually it became systems and habits to where like it is easy for me, but it is not easy for someone in the beginning when this is new to them.
I don't think anything's easy in the beginning for anything.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. So do you food prep a couple of different times throughout the week then, or do you just do it once a week?
Once a day.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
And how long does that usually take you to process?
10 to 20 minutes tops. Because I'm making a smoothie. Like, last night I literally like cut a watermelon in half and put both halves in the fridge and took one of them with me. That's a pretty easy food prep.
Oh, and then you just eat it right out of the...
Yeah, I just eat it with a spoon.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's super simple.
So you'd be out with fresh, people like meal prep and things like that. But like if you're eating raw fruits and vegetables, you can't really prep them a week in advance. They're going to be, falling apart by then.
I don't know. I do food prep usually once a week, sometimes twice. So I did some extra cooking earlier this week just because I have a kid who lives with me part-time.
Yeah.
So if I don't get all of my stuff done on Saturday after the farmer's market, then I usually will do it midweek as well.
Yeah.
But I have found that, again, this is probably different for a lot of people throughout the country. Like we live in food deserts in a lot of these bigger cities. I feel we're really fortunate here in Arizona where I can get fresh produce year round.
Yeah.
So I can buy a fresh bag of spinach from the farmer's market and it stays fresh for almost 2 weeks in my refrigerator if it's been processed properly.
Yeah.
So that's pretty impressive for me. So I go to the farmer's market on Saturdays mornings. Sometimes it's like 2 Trader Joe's bags full of produce, and I'll try and process all of that on a Saturday. I still eat meat, so I'll do like my browning and my cooking of the meats on Saturdays as well. And then I have like my little containers. I put everything in it, and it goes right into the freezer, and then it's ready to pull out for my lunches or whatever it may be. But I have half of a watermelon in my refrigerator, so I think I'm going to try that. I'll just bring it to the office tomorrow and just eat it right out of there. Because that's time consuming to cut up a whole watermelon.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. I'm just thinking because I made a video on Instagram where I like time lapsed me just eating it, and people like lost, like it just took off.
I loved the one where you're just sitting, you're just eating the bowl of peaches.
Yeah.
And that was just like so fascinating.
That was the first time I made a video like that. And so I a couple of years ago, I was just like, oh, people really love this videos of me just like eating a whole lot of fruit. So
because I think the concept is this fruit is too high in sugar, so they avoid eating fresh fruit,
Yes.
thinking it's going to spike their glucose
And
levels.
a woman the other day like tell me like, I'm diabetic, so I can't eat fruit. Like, that's how you got diabetic? Like overdoing on the pineapple? Like, come on.
That's why she drinks the diet soda.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Funny enough, I had a client tell me that years ago she was in Weight Watchers, and some woman raised her hand and was like, the other day I had like 20 grapes, and I'm just kind of worried because that was probably a lot of sugar, and just like, how many grapes is too many grapes? And the woman who's running it was like, listen, Linda, no one's here because they were eating too many grapes.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. And people just assume they're eating, and I think it's partially propaganda, maybe.
Yeah.
By telling us out there that you have to stay away from the sugar.
Yeah.
And we're misunderstanding what sugar is, but gluten turns into sugar in our bodies as well.
Yeah, so we've got this aversion to sugar because we're so used to refined sugar.
Yeah.
That we know is like in corn syrup and all these processed foods.
Even the healthy foods that claim to be organic and healthy, though it's still processed.
It's like, but sugar is naturally occurring in fruit. So there was a time when you couldn't get any of that stuff, right? And if you were craving sweet, the only thing you could do was go out and find fruit, right? But then we got smart and we're like, oh, we could make this other stuff taste better if we added sugar to it. So we actually, artificially make other foods more like fruit. But like, we're naturally sweet seekers because we're seeking out what's in fruit, but we've got really good at tricking ourselves and refining all the nutrients out of stuff and just adding the sugar to make it taste good. And then we wonder why we can't stop eating because we never get the nutrition that's in there, and the body never gets the signal of like, oh, got the nutrition we need.
Right,
can
like
be full
fruit,
now.
we get the
Yeah.
fiber that comes with that,
Yeah.
so it kind of counterbalances all that sugar.
We get the satiety signal of like, oh, I got the nutrition I needed. I can stop eating versus like, you know, like you have a bag of candy, especially if you're a kid. It's just like, oh, more.
Oh, I have relatives that will eat an entire bag of candy in one sitting,
Yeah.
and it's like, oh my gosh, my teeth hurt just thinking about it.
Ugh. Yeah.
Crazy. Yeah. Too much grapes. Linda, you're eating too much grapes.
Yep.
What's another excuse you tend to get from your clients then when it like you're trying to give them this diet plan, which isn't really a diet?
The other one is like, you know, how am I going to get enough protein? Like protein, like I'm going to die if I don't get enough protein. Or like, a woman literally, you know, she's falling apart, like so many disease conditions, like, but scared to death if she doesn't get protein. Which is weird because she's been trying to eat this high protein diet for like years and her health continues to decline.
So does she eat bacon for breakfast every morning with some fried eggs and?
Yeah, stuff like that. Yeah, and it's like, okay, so you've been doing that, but anyway, fruits and vegetables have protein in them. Like if you eat, you know, the diet I recommend, you probably get 7-8% of your calories from protein. If you eat a standard American diet, you get 16% of your calories from protein. But you know, like you pointed out, there's like these vegan bodybuilders and people like that are, you know, consuming lower protein diets that are just fine. And the fact is that like body recycles most of its protein. Most people are getting far too much, and it's pro-inflammatory. It's
right.
like pathogenic.
Doesn't that go to our kidneys and some of that thing?
Yeah, the body can't use all of it, but we think like, oh, more building material. Oh, well, you're already an adult. Like you don't need to constantly be adding on new cells.
Right.
Right. And like, what's the disease when you're adding on too many new cells? It's cancer.
And obesity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I think I've been on a weight gaining journey for the last couple of years. Just since the holidays, I've gained 20 pounds back, and it's been by eating mostly produce. And
fascinating.
Again, I eat again a little bit of meat, chicken, and some ground beef. Last week, I processed some organ meat and made that into some taco meat. That was really delicious. So you know the minerals and things that come with that too. But the thing that I struggled with the most was there were so many people telling me I wasn't getting enough protein.
Yeah.
And so for a couple of years, I ate a high meat diet thinking, well, clearly this is going to help me gain that weight back. And it, again, I got kidney issues.
Wow.
I was gaining problems. So I was gaining weight, but it was in the wrong areas. It wasn't helping me put muscle on at all, even though I was working out on a daily basis.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty intense. And there's a lot of misconception out there still where I think people are saying you have to eat almost 2 grams of protein per pound of body weight.
Yeah.
And that's so much. I would think that even 0.8 per pound that's still optimal, or maybe even more than what most people need. Again, if we're not trying to build muscle, there's no point in having so much protein.
Yeah.
So.
And a lot of what you see with these really big bodybuilders and stuff like that is like they've got muscle for sure, but like a lot of it is also just inflammation marbled in muscle, you know, and these like Mr. Olympia guys go on to like have heart attacks and all these other
in their 40s.
Yeah.
Yeah. Supposedly very healthy individuals dying in their 40s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what do you think then of this paleo and keto type diet where everybody's eating so much amounts of protein, animal protein, and then again they're staying away from carbs, and that's including all of the vegetables and fruits as well?
That's a good question. So I think there's definitely some positives of obviously they're staying away from the processed foods and things like allergens like gluten, and a lot of them avoid dairy, and that's really good. And so they're focusing on whole foods. And so, you know, they are eating, you know, some plants, right? And so I think there's value in both those things. You know, the high protein I don't think is necessary. It can cause the issues that you talked about. What's interesting is the evolution of it. Like I've been at this a while, right? And for a long time it was the paleo diet, and then it was like the primal diet, and then it was like that wasn't low carb enough, so they had to go to keto. And then it was like, oh man, these vegetables must be causing problems. We gotta like take those out and do carnivore. And then you got guys like Carnivore MD changed his name because he was having these problems, and now he's adding fruit back in. So it's like we've come full circle. First of all, you couldn't have fruit because it was carbs, and then they change their mind of like, oh, you can't eat vegetables either, but oh wait, okay, we can't back down on that. Maybe we'll just come back to the fruit. So it's funny watching them kind of like circling the answer and getting closer and closer to it. So.
And do you think some of that's still propaganda from like maybe the beef companies, the meat companies that are out there? They're one of the largest.
Yeah, I mean, I
retailers in the
think that there's just like there are certain like belief systems that we just inherit over time, and we like begin to believe that like, oh man, like, you know, for a lot of my life I thought like you have to eat meat, like that's just table stakes for surviving as a human being, right? And I found out later like you didn't need to, right? But I think that a lot of these things, they've been in the ethos so long that we just accept them as fact. And I think a lot of things in the past few years with all that's happened with COVID and all that, like people have begun to like, oh, maybe all these things that I thought about health like weren't actually so. And I think there's still some more unraveling about that. Like we think we know everything, especially when it comes to a lot of scientific things, and I think we've got a ways to go in our understanding. Like we understand things the most we ever have in human history, as far as I can tell. But like, there's still a lot we don't know, and I think that was one thing in chiropractic school, like learning all that human physiology is like, wow, this thing is like insanely complex. Like we know like a fraction of it.
Fraction.
Yeah.
I like the idea of just going back to the basics. Just
Yes.
eat what's growing on the ground, and we're all good to go.
Fundamentals, you know, people don't like them, but they get results.
They do. Okay.
Yeah.
So one last question. I noticed on Instagram yesterday that you had volunteered at a local event,
Yeah.
helping out with some homeless men, and I thought that was really charitable and notable of you. So can you tell me just a little bit more about that? And
Yeah, sure. So maybe like 2018, I got invited to, I had a friend who did homeless outreach where they would cook food for him and stuff like that. And she just invited me to volunteer. And I went to one of those. I was like, this is fun. And I was like, do you think maybe I could come back next time and bring my table? And she was like, oh, that's actually like a really good idea. And so I did it, and it was a smash hit. And then like they loved it and I loved it. This was just really fun because a lot of these people, they're like sleeping on the streets. A lot of them are like addicted to painkillers. Like they're really hurting. And so it's just like no one will be more full of gratitude than someone who's been like just sleeping on the streets and in chronic pain. It doesn't even realize how much they're hurting until they get out of pain, and they're like, whoa, you know, this like changed my life. And so it was just fun to be able to offer that service to people, and it's just a good way to like also just kind of, sometimes you get way too much caught up in like the rat race of trying to succeed in business and like all your problems in life that you think you have, and then you're like, okay, well, these people are like living on the streets with nothing, sometimes in downtown Phoenix in the summer.
yeah,
And you're like, whoa, okay, like
we
I actually
don't
got it
have
pretty good.
problems.
Yeah, I got it really good, you know. And so it's like, oh, I can bless these other people with this. So yeah, continued with it. Volunteered with a new organization yesterday, Cloud Covered Streets. They're fantastic, and they have outreach events like often twice a week. So super recommend looking those guys up. And it's just been a fun kind of hobby of like, hey, you know, if I want to give back, this is a way to do it, and just like serve in a unique way. And it's funny because I've talked to a bunch of other chiropractors, tried to get for years, no one will do it. And I'm like, you're missing out.
Yeah, it feels good to give back.
Yeah, it does. It's a lot of fun, and yeah. So it's just after doing it, I was like, man, it's been too long. I need to do this at least once a month because this
Good
is
for
really
you.
fun.
Yeah, and it's a great program, and I
Yeah.
think Phoenix needs it. We've got a growing population of homeless people.
Yeah, I mean, I will tell you, doing this for a number of years after 2020, I mean, during COVID, like the population just like exploded of homeless people, like,
Yeah.
and the area of expanse of the, what do they call it, the strip or the whatever, got just bigger. And
Well, I think they've been dislocated twice, that
Yeah.
group, twice already. Like the veterans group was broken down. So it's like they just keep getting shoveled around.
you can't like, it's not like they're rats. You can't like kill them off. Like they got to go somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a lot of great people who do a lot of work to serve them, but like it's a big problem, and we definitely don't have our arms around it.
No, so we need more volunteers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and to some degree that's a Band-Aid. Like obviously there are larger scale problems that are causing it, but like I don't know what the solution of that is, but at least we can do damage control to some degree.
Help nurture.
Yeah.
Yeah, well done. Well, thank you for coming on today. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you back soon.
All right, cool. Sounds good.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning in today. I hope you learned something new about health and well-being. Remember, your current position is not your final destination. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Definitely reach out with questions so we can discuss it in a future episode. Until next time, live pure.